All right, so James, I have to start by asking about the painting behind you. That just looks so great. Tell us a little bit about that.
Is it? It's this larger one up there with the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you guys can see it actually in its full glory. So that is from a series called the Heart series by my father, Vladimir Nazarov. So he was searching for some sort of central symbol that we can all connect to, and he settled on love after exploring many different symbols in his practice. And he thought the shape of the heart was always just amusing because it is not the shape of an actual human heart, but it's how we are able to all like connect to each other in society through love. We're beings of love, and how these symbols then develop sort of a power of their own, some sort of like almost godlike power that we have attributed with belief, with feeling, with faith, and then it sort of gets a life of its own and influences us. And this is some sort of personification of that. This sort of goddess image with the eyes. You can't see like the full nose and the face and everything, but it's such a striking, powerful image.
That is so beautiful and really is what I hear from everyone who has a lot of wisdom in life, whether they are coming from the spiritual side or even the business side, the power of love as that universal connector for us. And so that's absolutely beautiful to kick this conversation off with. And beauty really is a lot of what we're talking about here. At Liberty Ventures, we're often talking about how investors are able to back early stage startups or maybe what they're looking for in the public markets. And what you and your family have been doing in investing in the art world is just such a different approach from what a lot of people in the Liberty Ventures network are normally thinking about. So let me just start by asking you to introduce the concept of investing in art before we go anywhere else. Why is this something that members of the Liberty Ventures network should consider?
For us in our family, art is it's the superior asset class. And I mean, we say that because we understand it very well. We understand the industry very well. We spent a lot of time in it, but it makes sense when you really break it down. So, what you have in an art asset is a form of expression, a story that's being told. And we are, at our core as a family, we call ourselves narrative investors. So, if you had to like ask us, like, what are we investing in? We're investing in stories. We believe that it's really stories that affect the price of something. That price is more of like a fiction, a liar. That it's not the real value of an object or a thing or why you're even doing something. So for us, art allows people to connect. Art is a way to invest into a story before other people realize that story and benefit from it. Art's a way to build legacy for yourself, for your family, the people that you care about, because art will generally outlive us most of the time. And if it becomes great art, we are forever attached to that great art. And from a practical sense, I consider it probably one of the strongest liberty assets on this planet. You have within the margins of an artwork the ability to store vast amounts of monetary energy. And that monetary energy can move and can be secured with ease. It can go anywhere in the world that you feel is a secure place to store it and doesn't weigh too much. And at the same time, it can build your story and your family can enjoy it, and it can become a legacy asset that is more than just the price of it. It's something that keeps the family together and keeps its wealth intact.
To double click on one thing that you said there that I think is really interesting, the idea of art as a liberty investable asset, because it's something, say, a painting like what you have behind you, is something that you can take with you to different parts of the world that you're able to store that isn't necessarily as traceable as other things and is more difficult to take away is a really interesting concept, especially when we think about plenty of times in history when families have had fortunes taken away from them by authoritarian regimes, and being able to preserve art or send it somewhere else was a way to preserve their wealth in the face of that oppression.
Yeah,
That seems really interesting.
and it's a it's a funny play on that concept of what is overvalued. Like if you have a $5 million painting And at one point a few years ago, it was a $10,000 painting. It happens. It appreciated in value. A market formed around it, and that's what it's worth right now if you want to buy it. Most people will look at it. They may say $5 million is it's overpriced. It's too much. It's overvalued. But to someone in the world, it's undervalued. And if you are worried about the people you care about, you're worried about yourself, you're in a region of the world that has some sort of political instability that's starting. Well, that $5 million within the country that you have is at risk. And people are going to say, okay, you're going to pour it into a painting. You're going to take that painting somewhere in the world that's secure, but now it's an illiquid asset. Good luck trying to sell that. I think your $5 million in the bank account of that country now is just as illiquid. And if something happens there, good luck getting that money. But you have your $5 million parked where you feel it's safe. And if you don't need the money, great. But if you're in desperate need for it, you need liquidity, fine. You take a discount on that asset. But let's say you get $2 million from it and you need that money. You need to take care of the people that you love. It's the best $2 million of your life. You just had the best $3 million loss of your life. And if this is not an issue that you're thinking of in your life, then great, and congratulations to you, because you live in a portion of the world where you have at least the privilege to not have to think about these things. But these are realities, and we should keep them in mind.
And before we move on from everything you said before, I want to play devil's advocate here, because you said that when you look at investing in art as investing in stories, and to an outside investor, I have to ask the question: just how valuable is a story? How do you actually put a monetary value on that, instead of this just being something that's completely made up? And like you said, it might be worth 5 million one day and then 1 million or 10,000 the next day, because there's really nothing backing it up other than that story.
Well, there's still a system in place that's backing it up. I mean, our belief, our argument is that all value is a story. Nothing nothing's real. I mean, the cash in your pocket is faith in the U.S. government and what it will do to secure the value of its dollar. Your investments into a certain company are also a story based upon that, and the people who perhaps got into that story early, who are incentivized to make sure everyone knows that story. Uh, as long as you're early enough, as the story develops, there's a return for you to have. The later that you get in, the later that you get into the stock, the later that you buy the painting, it's $5 million now. You have to convince someone of that $5 million story. But if you were able to buy it at $10,000 or $50,000 on its way up, that $5 million price tag isn't as much of a worry. You can still sell it at a discount and make a great profit in the process. But the play on story, which aggravates artists a lot, and I see that in the emerging art space, is they're not having early success when they're starting. They're not getting the gallery shows. They aren't able to get the collectors to buy their work, and it's sad because you see it start to dull their spirit. They start to realize, well, maybe I'm not good at this. And an artist feeling like that it's a very, very sad realization, because when you're born an artist, you were born an artist. You have to do what you're doing, and you want to, but you have the world telling you that they don't want your stuff. So what does that mean? Am I bad? Is my art bad? Am I not talented? Am I not good? I think of the story of Basquiat, right? So you look at an artist of that caliber, a blue chip artist, and people will say, because Basquiat is a great artist or was a great artist, his work is in museums. His work is in the best collections on the planet. His work sells for millions and millions of dollars. His work is extremely difficult to source and to find because he is a great artist. And my family has found that it's usually the inverse. Um, it's because Basquiat's in the best collections and in the best museums. It's because his work is selling for millions of dollars. It's because it's extremely difficult to acquire his work and the best of his work that he is a great artist. And there's sort of a formula behind that forms that story. So when artists don't know that, they suffer. I think story is immensely important.
And what's interesting from what you're saying is that I'm actually noticing some similarities to what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And actually, one of the members of our network, Dr. Bill Klein at the University of Illinois, talks about entrepreneurship as artistry, especially because when a lot of business people are getting started, then they're building a new company, people don't believe in them. They're seen as crazy. They're pushing a story of what the world might look like in the future that they can't back up beyond a conviction that they're going to be able to make it happen and a story for it that they're getting investors and suppliers and customers to buy into and to help them out. And so that early stage artist, that early stage entrepreneur, from what you're describing, seem to actually have some interesting similarities.
Yeah, when you start to unpack it, it's all industries seem to be the same one because they're ruled fundamentally by human nature, and that's really the understanding of um, of what drives people. I have found. So it's like if you want to investor into a startup or into a company, and you could tell that investor what your company does, and then they can assess whether or not there's a market for it, if it'll be successful, if the founder can execute and actually make it happen. Or you can tell that investor, hey, this is also who's on our cap table. This is who's involved, and just by the sheer virtue of the right names being involved with you, they may not even ask the other questions of can you pull this off, and what are you doing, because they have the faith in the story. They know what that investor has done before, so that's good enough for them.
That is absolutely true. And let's talk about what you mean that all business is the same industry, and you really just are trying to understand human nature. So what is human nature in your mind when it comes to investing?
Okay, it certainly comes back to love, but I will start with the difficulty of being an artist, an emerging artist trying to sell your work without understanding truly who your market is and what it wants. So, what does it take to create a piece of art? Let's say on the smallest scale, a few $100s of material cost, a few $100s of labor cost. So, if you are going to make a profit practically just from selling that art, you have to sell for maybe a few $1,000s. What's the average salary in this country? I think statistically 60, $70,000, something along those lines. And what's take home pay after that? I don't know, maybe 50K. Okay, you're in a 50 to 70K range of the average person that you can reach out to. You're asking them to spend 5%, 10% of what they are taking home as pay every single year to buy your work. That's not your market. You may achieve it, like someone may actually want to buy it. They may realize that's a great investment, and that's worth some luxuries I may have, when in reality people making 5K really can't even pay their bills monthly. So you are catering to 1% of the population, and that's a small subset of the entire global population. That's really who your market is. And now you want to convince that market to buy, I don't know, blue clouds. You want them to see the merit and the value of the clouds that you've painted. And somebody will. Yes, there is a buyer in that group that will see those clouds and say, take my $5,000. Okay, it's yours. I need to have that on my wall. I think that's a tougher sell than realizing that this is a person like all people. We are emotional. Every rational decision is an emotional decision at its core. We love, we form bonds, we form families, we want to take care of those families, we want to take care of ourselves, we want to live to our full potential, we have self actualization as a need. If we can cater to that, then we have that entire 1% as our buying network. And if we're worried about our standing in society, will we be known? Will we be remembered as just someone who made a lot of money? Will we be remembered as someone who contributed to culture, who bought a painting, secured it, put it on the walls of a museum, or opened their doors up for people in the public to see it, to experience it? Now this person is part of our cultural canon, part of our story. Their family, their legacy is now secure through it. Maybe it's going to go up and it's going to be worth 10, 20, 100 times what they paid for it. Great. they're building wealth and they're building value for their family. And again, now they have this asset to move around the world and secure their wealth whenever they feel that they have to. So for us, we understand that market. We try to explain it to artists and to people who would want to listen. I mean, we always say that art is immortality for your wealth and for your family name.
Now, you've mentioned your family a number of times, and it's an incredible story for how your family got into art and got into all of this. I'd love for you to share that story now.
I'd love to, and I'm a super lucky dude. Yeah, I have the best family, the best parents, and I they came from the former Soviet Union. So we've been in the country like 40 plus years now, uh, products of communism. So they were. It was very refreshing to come to New York, and my father grew up uh, learning art in programs, educated, but he didn't have the choice to pursue being an artist. It just there was no ability for him to say, okay, I want to continue to do this and I want to make this happen. But when he came here, he was surrounded by nothing but choice, and it was an amazing feeling for him. So uh, he's creating his art. He is starting his entrepreneurship journey here, building all of that, collecting, learning about that market, and then us as kids, we got to learn about that. But we didn't really start in it, or at least I didn't, until about 08, 09, during the that crash, the housing market crash that we had. And that was a wild time because it felt like the world was on fire and everyone was panicking. And there was so much opportunity to buy real estate because of the unfortunate reality of blood in the streets. It's just what it was. Yet people were still hesitant to deploy into the space because we're right in the middle of it. We don't know what's going to happen. Maybe these values are done forever. So during that time, my father was making introductions to people who had art collections, to these same buyers who were still hesitant on real estate, but they had the appetite for the art. And it was, I guess they say it's like the the three D's are what like sources the best art deals: death, debt, and divorce. And okay, so maybe it's the four D's because it's depression, perhaps does that as well. So I'm looking at this work, and it's like I don't want to sound mean, but I did not feel like it was like the most talented work on the planet. Yet I was being told that these artists were geniuses, geniuses of history, cultural icons. I felt like I could create the work. And I don't consider myself a talented artist. I haven't been to school for it. I think the work that I would create is terrible, but I felt like I can replicate it. Um, Yet the price tags for these works were telling me that I was wrong. Like there's something that I didn't understand. There's something that I didn't know. And it was a very, very inspiring moment. I came to like the quick realization that there's other reasons why people are buying this work, and I came to the realization that people usually hold these as treasures and would only sell something like this in the worst possible situation of their lives. And I wondered like what lives were saved or secured because they had these assets in the first place to sell during this massive downturn. And I had to study this market. I had to figure out everything about it. There was no way back.
And so a I love the fact that your family came from the former Soviet Union and found opportunity to explore anything your dad wanted to when he got to America, and art was one of his passions, and so got into this, and then you followed in his footsteps. But tell us a little bit more about the evolution since you got into this and the way that you approach investing in the art world and just art in general now, because it's been 18 years since the crash.
Oh my god, I'm I'm getting old.
We're
Yeah,
getting old. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's evolved in a very interesting way. It's been a calling. I mean, we've always been drawn to art. My father being who he is, collecting forever, me getting into the market, and we have seen the parallels early between actually investing in emerging artists and sort of angel investing and venture investing into tech. Is like we were talking about, there's similarities to be made there. So we would find artists that we connect with. We would buy their art. We would buy art from artists, the art that we liked. Sometimes we bought art that we didn't, connect with immediately, but we connected with the artist. So it was still very early in their careers, and everyone's kind of figuring it out at that point. So we're buying this art. We know what we know about the market that the artist doesn't know yet. We know what a good deal looks like. We know what a good contract looks like. We know what demands an artist is asked of by the galleries and the dealers and the curators they work with that artists don't yet know. So when we would have positions in these artists, they would call us with their problems. They would call us with questions. Then we more sort of in a more proactive way started to guide them, but it was still passive. So this sort of like artist career management concept we were doing before we realized we were doing it. And at this point, um, I had a lot of time to think during the pandemic, like most of us did. And coming out of it, I, was able uh, to realize that there's this role that could be actively pursued in managing artists' careers. And I felt like that was sort of missing in the industry. And I've dived into that, and I have a small roster of artists that I started with now. And Cameron, who I mentioned, and he just had his show open on Friday. And I, as he's pursuing his practice, he has my support. He has my family's support. He's able to access us as sort of like a data resource. He's able to just I think people really overlook how much more success a person can have when they have a mentor, when they have someone that's guiding them, someone who's seen it, and someone who would just listen. Like artists that we've collected, they've called us at 2 in the morning with their problems, and you know what? We love them, so we'll listen. And if they need help, we'll give them help to the best of our ability. So now we're transforming that into a business, and I like to think it's had a very good start. Don't want to jinx it, but it's going well.
But I'm so happy that this is working out for you. Let me ask, for any investor who has never dipped their toes into the art world before, what would you recommend be a way to start out, to start exploring this, especially in something that they have no experience in, they're probably scared by, for the objection that I raised in the beginning.
Yeah. It's fear as an obstacle. It's like not understanding why something goes from 5K to 500K. That really confuses that first buyer. I think you have to be brave. You have to be brave. You have to, if you're lucky enough to realize what benefits this being involved in this industry will have for you and your family, you have to take a leap. We learned a lot just in investing in general, but certainly in the art market by making mistakes. That's the only way. And mistakes are a gift. You know what went wrong, you can learn from them, and then you can adapt. So you start to buy. Look, the art world is the art world. There's different portions of it. Every gallery is a gallery. Every artist is an artist. But within that network are the galleries and artists that enter our sort of cultural canon. Those are the ones that are more or less investable for the multiple reasons that I've mentioned, and you have to identify them. If you just start shopping for art at any type of gallery, not many, most of them will not make you any type of return. But if you're paying attention to what's happening, then you could adapt to that and sort of figure out which artists succeed, which galleries are in that ecosystem. Or you befriend people in the industry that know, and you learn from them as well. And never be afraid to ask questions. And if you don't take that first leap, you're never going to do it.
All right. So again, uh, for a lot of us who are outsiders, we don't know the industry. What are the things that you think are going well in it, and what are the things that you would change in the art investing world?
I think the ecosystem of the art market has figured itself out over the last few years, and I see my family's role in it in enhancing it and helping it grow further. I'd say there's a few practical things. sort of in the background that I would change that I think would make the industry grow better. I think would bring more money to emerging artists, and that's really our focus: is artists being able to sell their work, artists being able to eat and thrive and be happy, pursuing their craft. The biggest change I'd probably advocate for is bringing back the 1031 exchange for art. Was moved a couple years ago, and like you sell a piece of real estate today, you have a certain amount of time to invest into new real estate and offset the taxes. And there are people sitting on treasures that, if they sold, they can pour that money back into mid-career artists, into emerging artists, and really fuel the ecosystem further, which I think would be great, for many reasons. And in general, I artists are artists are really like the economic driver of this world. That's our belief, and I think that they deserve massive tax breaks for the type of work that they do. They make a lot of sacrifice pursuing this calling, and in reality, it's this calling that feeds our economy. And a thriving cultural scene is what transports money from one place in the world to another. And sure, we'll travel one time, we'll see a country or a city's monuments, and say, okay, great. And um, when we have museums and we have theaters, we have different shows that are happening. We have reasons to revisit these places, to experience different culture, to learn, to grow, and at that same time, that's generating employment income, that's generating sales tax, that's generating resources for that local economy. So I I think that artists should achieve more, should be delivered more honor than they're given, and more benefits. And as an example, at Art Basel in Miami in December, I've always loved this. I think it's like 4 or 5 days out of the entire year, and the impact is that it brings in sort of third party revenue during that time. It's about like $500 million, $500 million, and that's what 90 something percent of the people visiting Art Basel, visiting Miami during that period of time, probably wouldn't be able to afford a single painting there, but they're still coming. They want to be a part of it. They want to connect, and they're spending money to do that, and people are benefiting from it.
James, I really appreciate you sharing this idea with the network. We haven't talked about this at all in the Liberty Ventures Network before, especially with you coming at it from the Liberty angle here, and just so appreciate what you and your family are doing in advocating for liberty and showing another opportunity to promote liberty through capitalism. So thank you so much for all of this. I'm looking forward to getting you out to one of our events to talk about
Yeah,
this more soon.
I can't wait. Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, James.